Hey, Scott Jordan and Mark Warner here for Jancast.com. A cleaner and healthier world. Podcast
there,
enjoy cleaner and
everybody.
healthier world. This is show number 87 from February 18th, and we are back, and we got lots of news, some good news, some really good news.
Amazing news out there going on right now, but probably what we get the most feedback on is when we do our expose.
Dun, dun. We need some music.
Dun, dun, dun. So really, there were 60,000 hits on this back a year ago when you brought up the issue with Southwest Airlines.
Yep.
And they were using something that made you completely free from fear of catching anything for at least a month, as long as you were only flying around Texas.
Yep.
But something else has happened, right, Scott?
Well, if you go to germwashing.com, which is the site that we created specifically for kind of ferreting out some of these stories we hear. So yes, Southwest Airlines came out with a brand new means of disinfecting their airplanes that implied, I think at that point it was between 7 and 30 days residual claims. And I said, that sounds fantastic, because if we had a product like that, now this is a year later, we wouldn't be having any of these troubles. I wonder what happened with that. Well, it's because it wasn't real. So, hey, last week I found United must have gotten sold the same bill of goods that Southwest got sold. So Mark, you're our national sales manager. We need to hire whoever that is that's selling these airlines on this product that has this residual claims, because it's real, right?
Well, there's pieces of it that are real,
Yes.
And there's facts that are being left out. So the pieces that are real, there's always been residuals that will prevent mold and mildew from forming on textile. There's been residuals that have been used in healthcare to fight bacteria.
Yep.
But the bottom line is we're fighting a virus now, and that's SARS-CoV-2, which causes COVID-19, and these things do not carry residual claims on SARS-CoV-2 virus.
Well, wouldn't you think somebody at United Airlines would know that? I read the label. They didn't. They obviously didn't read the label. The product they're using, it's not the same product that Southwest was talking about using, which I don't believe they're still using it anymore. United has a different product, but it's from the same registration number. So if you know enough about how to look up things, you can look at the master label, and it says it's effective against odor-causing bacteria for residual claims, which is fantastic, because we are all concerned about whether or not somebody stinky is sitting next to you on the airplane, right?
That's well put.
Yeah.
Well, I have, being an eternal optimist, I believe that we're entering into an age where people are going to start to honor and respect full transparency.
Yeah.
And when it comes to talking about something as potentially dangerous as COVID, I think the world deserves openness and honesty and transparency, instead of leaving certain facts out, whether or not something is efficacious. For viruses, and people are being led to believe. You talked about the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's a shame.
People are they don't know the difference between a virus and a bacteria. They think they're all just germs.
Yeah.
And a claim against one would be, logical that it'd be a claim against the other, but that's not true.
Yeah.
Claims are very specific, and bacteria as a cell, you can break the cell wall and kill it. Viruses are very different than that. They're like a speck of dust, DNA. Technically, they're not even necessarily defined as a living element. They're like a speck of dust, like a virus that gets into your computer. It does damage, but is it alive? No, but it still gets in and it does damage. It's what viruses do to the human body, and that's why you can't kill it with spears and spikes, oh my.
Well, I did get into, on the Sunday Sales Blast, and those of you that don't subscribe, you can subscribe down below. We're going to have a link down there to be able to subscribe to get a notice of the Jancast being put out there on our weekly schedule. But on the Sunday Sales Blast, I did get into great detail about the microban thing. So I don't want to get into it now because it'll get me upset.
But it's the same theme of what we're describing.
The worst part of it is the United Airlines advertising that they have residual claims. You've got to find that to be able to know that they're doing it. That microban ad was seen by millions and millions and millions of people that now think that product has residual claims that, well, you've had
That
people
will protect
ask you
them.
about, hey, how come Bullen doesn't have a product like that, right?
Right.
Because it doesn't do what they implied. But I don't want to get in any trouble with them. But let's move on before I'm getting upset.
Yes, sir.
So let's move on.
Beyond that, though, what's interesting is that some people have kind of figured out some things.
Yeah.
Like, technically 100 million people have been infected in the world. And how many people died in New Zealand?
Well, speaking of getting on an airplane, if you can get on an airplane, well, you can't go there right now because they're on a 3-day lockdown. So what New Zealand does, those of you who don't know it, New Zealand essentially had, the stats are, it's unbelievable, the stats. At 2,330 cases. That's for the whole country.
Right.
The whole country. And 2,258 of those people have recovered. And they've had 25 deaths. 25, that's it. Total worldwide is 109 million cases with 2.4 million deaths. So they have, shutting down your whole country is not easy, but so they had 3 cases, I think it was, a couple of days ago. They shut the whole country down, but they only do it for 3 days. Which is kind of an interesting way of doing it. They don't do it for months and months. They just say, okay, we're going to shut everything down for 3 days until we figure out where these cases came from. So very, very interesting. And now they're attributing that apparently because of this 3-day shutdown, they're going to have what they're calling lockdown bursts. They're going to have and the coolest thing is they've come up with the top names for possible children that are born during the lockdown. So there's Quarantina. That's a good one. I like that. There's Locky. There's COVID spelled Kovyyd. And then this one's cute, Covy.
Covy.
Kovvy. That's pretty neat. So very creative thinking.
A result of population explosion during lockdown.
So 9 months from this date, it's going to be interesting to see the stats.
That's for sure.
Yeah. So that's interesting factoids that we have.
One of the things that kind of ties into jumping on a plane and going to New Zealand is you're not going to be able to get in, but where the ground zero was for New Zealand is fascinating. They attributed it to an airline worker that was involved with removing items to be laundered from the airplane.
Yeah, Sky Services.
And so that brought up the whole issue of, wow, if people are now documented as catching COVID as a result of touching laundry items or textiles, so that has kind of a springboard effect of questions that we've been getting, Scott. What is the survival rate of this stuff on surfaces? Because we know that the preoccupation has been somewhat regarding air droplets and masking, yet surfaces can contribute to the spread, so we can't back off on doing that. And so one of the questions we've been getting a ton this week is, what are the survival rates? Is there a chart? And one of the statistics that's kind of worth knowing is that on like metal and plastic and wood, generally speaking, we're talking 4 to 5 days survival rate. That came out of a study that was copywritten 2021, which basically means it's within 30 days old.
Wow.
4 to 5 days, even wood. The unique thing, of course, is things like copper, which has got some antimicrobial properties to it, won't allow it to live very long, but it will survive for several hours on copper.
Yeah, so that kind of changes the comment about you don't really need to worry about touch surfaces that much. It's all airborne, which is not the case.
And touch surface, being textile and being this airline worker in New Zealand, caused a nationwide shutdown as a result of touching a contaminated surface, which was textile. So I thought that was pretty relevant to put out there. And the other thing is that disinfecting surfaces is documented in a lot of existing standards. There's an IICRC-RIA ANSI standard. How do you like that for alphabet soup? But they did a standard that definitely weaves into it concern about making sure that we're disinfecting A, properly, B, at the right frequency. And then there's another one that's come out that is from ASHRAE, ASHRAE,
It's
and
easy
ASHES.
Easy for you to say.
So, all associations love the alphabet soup thing. So, but their standard also builds around making sure that we're disinfecting surfaces, as well as concerns about air. Now, air is the primary transfer, and it takes us to these things, Scott. So, you know, the number one thing, regardless, whether it's robots, whether it's 7-day kill claims or whatever it is, the number one thing that stops transmission is masking. Yeah. So I got into this debate with my mother, who wanted to know why I pulled my mask up when somebody approached me. And I said to her, well, that's because they had their mask on, and it's common courtesy if somebody approaches you with a mask on that you pull your mask on. It's kind of like, you know, fist bumping or shaking a hand when somebody extends their hand. It's a common courtesy. Yeah. So if somebody approaches you and they have a mask on and yours is off because you're by yourself somewhere, that's common courtesy to put it on. That's what we do here. And she said, well, I didn't know that. And I said, now you do.
Does your mother watch this show?
She's an avid listener and watcher.
Well, shout out then.
Yes, we'll shout out, hey, Mom. So with that, she's 89, by the way.
Okay.
So some of this stuff goes a little over her head.
Well, nothing to worry about, because, you know, if you're checking into a hotel, you just go through the hotel spray booth thing, right?
So they have a setup, and these are in some resorts in Mexico currently in play, where it looks like what you go through at TSA at the airport, you know, one of those little like cabana things you kind of walk through, and it like hoses you down.
Nice.
I'm kind of like, a couple things go through my mind, Scott. It's like, A, what are they hosing you down with, you know?
Yes, that's what I would
B,
wonder. Are
you going through naked? Or can you, what's going on here? So I suspect that that might be interesting to research further.
Problematic. I think that wasn't that an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie where he was like going to Mars or something, and they sprayed him down.
Total Recall.
Total Recall.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, our technician back there. Thank you. Total Recall for somebody looking for something to watch this weekend.
The first iteration of Total Recall, because it was remade.
Yeah.
But anyway, that kind of takes us into, you know, we're into this whole disease thing here, and really it's kind of important to let the audience know that there's a brand new outbreak of Ebola in West Africa. Yeah. And Ebola is something that terrifies most people.
Not good.
It certainly terrifies me. It's a bloodborne pathogen, not airborne. That's kind of the good news. But the bad news is many of us remember the West African outbreak where over 10,000 people died from it. Yep. And it's a pretty horrific death. It's, you know, full body bleed out. So that just popped up. Expectation of a brand new outbreak, which would be an epidemic, a regional epidemic related to Ebola in West Africa. And our, you know, we're going to keep those folks in Africa in our thoughts and prayers.
That's a bad one. That's a real bad one.
So kind of like there's only one thing I can think of that would be worse, and that would be like the zombie apocalypse, right? So
we're having that too?
Well, I was telling some folks,
not?
The CDC actually did a zombie apocalypse study. And everybody's like, you're kidding.
How'd they do a study?
So here's what they did. They said that we want to build a study around how would you fight a zombie apocalypse? And the reason why they chose zombie apocalypse, because they couldn't imagine anything ever worse. And so the idea was to develop protocols and procedures that would deal with the zombie apocalypse, not because there's an expectation of one, but just because as you think about something that horrific, everything that you put into play in terms of protocol and best practices kind of becomes evident. You know, how close do you get? Do you touch? Do you run? Do you walk? Do you carry weapons? You know, I guess Walking Dead. What do you do? But they're truly, and if you're curious, and I'm sure many of you are, you can find this. It's the CDC's zombie apocalypse study designed to be the ultimate test of proper procedure and protocols for infectious outbreaks.
We'll put the link below.
So I thought you would like to hear that.
Yeah. Well, good stuff. We're going to do a cleaning tip. We're trying to do these each week, so ultimately we end up with hundreds and hundreds of cleaning tips. So this is cleaning tip number 3 that we're going to show you right now.
So one of the things we always talk about is being able to verify and validate cleanliness of surfaces. And in the past, we might have looked at things, sniffed to see if there was an odor, and as you can see, there doesn't appear to be any soil, and there doesn't appear to be any odor. But you'd be wrong. A blacklight has the ability to cause organic soil to glow, actually identifying the sources of mist soil. Is that amazing or what? So as you saw in that cleaning tip,
Yep.
obviously organic material glows under a black light. Anybody that's ever watched CSI knows that.
Yeah.
So it becomes a great aid in detecting whether or not cleaning procedures have taken place and if they've been effective. So we'll continue to throw that kind of stuff out at you in the days and weeks and months to come.
So if you can find a little portable black light to carry with you, you can see whether or not cleaning's been done, at least in the bathroom. Which you can see in that cleaning tip that we just showed. That's pretty amazing what you can see is like not being seen by the normal human eyeballs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's more to come.
Yep. Well, good stuff. So stay tuned for future shows next week. And thank you very much for tuning in. Last week's show, we talked about the fact that you should share it out, pass it on.
To two people.
The two people.
Yep, so you have to have a geometrical progression working for you.
Yep, so we have that link below. You can go to sign up for getting notification on this. So thank you very much for doing that. We appreciate it to build our audience. So let's get our mask back on so we can get back to business down in the office area. So thank you very much, Mark.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.